All right, how's everyone doing? I'm Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So what I want to call this podcast is, are you a good influence or a bad one? And the reason I bring this up is because I was doing a podcast a while ago with one of my friends. And, I bounced between Chicago and Florida throughout my teens and then my 20s. And then I ended up gambling and actually going all over the United States at a young age. To a lot of different casinos, Indian reservations, and islands like the Bahamas. And we were doing a lot of crazy stuff back then. Not only gambling, just living a certain lifestyle. I guess you could say, drinking, partying, whatever, the whole game. So what I find quite interesting is a lot of my friends, when we get together, and I have separate groups of friends, which is pretty amazing because I went to summer school in Florida, but I was, in Chicago was my regular school. And then, you have other friends as well, like my gym rat friends. Then I had friends that I hung out with when I came to Florida, a bunch of New York guys. Those are a separate group of friends. So, like a lot of people, I think we have all these different groups of friends sometimes, and each one of them, you love them for who they are. And a lot of times, some groups come together, but a lot of my Florida guys are different than my New York guys. A lot of my New York guys are different from my Chicago guys. And then you actually have other guys, now that I'm older, going on 50, I have other friends. And then you have family members. So you have all these different things. But I was talking to them, and a lot of my family members and friends talk about all the great times, a lot of times that they had with me, which I love. I mean, most of them, I can't even remember the stories and some of the crazy stuff we did. I ended up getting, married because I was exhausted from my lifestyle. At about 26, I think, I got married. But up until then, I lived a pretty crazy lifestyle. And it wasn't even just women as much as it was just being my father owned a vending business. First, he owned a club till I was 14, and then we went into the vending business. So not only did we party or go out and get nuts, we were in a lot of my friends, family members, and them, if they hung around with me or worked with me, we were constantly in bars, nightclubs, discos, gentlemen's clubs. So it was like where you work is where there's always a party, I always said. But I went back now to when we were younger because some of my friends, some of them ended up with, drinking a lot. Became, maybe I wouldn't say it necessarily, some became alcoholics, some still, got hooked on drugs and all these different types of things. And the one thing I was against was drugs, not even steroids. I wasn't down with. Those were just, that was just off limits, I guess you could say, with drugs. Even though I hung with friends that did drugs, dealt drugs, were involved with drugs, and that was just the way it is. That's impossible not to be around if you're in the bar business or in that business in general. We were in the vending business, but if you think you're going to be hanging around bars, nightclubs, gentlemen clubs, discos, and everything, and you're going to avoid drugs, you're out of your mind. That was just something I wasn't interested in. It's maybe just one of those things. But so I kind of always looked at myself as kind of like somebody who, when we were younger, had it together because I was making pretty, a substantial amount of money. And even though we gambled, we did pretty well. We weren't like bust-out losers. At the beginning we were. We didn't know what we were doing, and then we ended up booking, and then we ended up doing other things with gambling, and we lived a really cool life for a long time. Like I said, we were traveling, and we were living a really cool lifestyle. We were taking charter flights all over to Atlantic City. We'd be going to Biloxi, and then I'd be going to California. We went to Yucaipa, and then Vegas. I even did my honeymoon in Vegas, and living that kind of lifestyle was great. And then I wanted to look back at my life with my friends, and we discussed things. And I realized when we're younger, I don't know if I put stress on them, but I looked at it and I actually thought I might have been a good influence on them. But the truth was, a lot of times I wasn't. And, I want to have a podcast discussing this with some of my close friends. Because I had a fake ID at a very young age. My father said I had to have one to help work with him. So when I came here at 16, I had to have one to go in and out of the bars with him so I can help him collect money or move equipment just in case the cops came or we got questioned. So I got a fake ID. And I can hold my own because my father, like I said, owned a nightclub till he was 14. So when I started even come here for summer school, I'm in and out of bars again. I met some guys, and then I moved to Florida officially at 18, and I was going in and out of bars and nightclubs and discos, even by myself, for many, many years. It was just the way I guess I was programmed, but a lot of my friends wanted to live that lifestyle as well, even the younger guys under 21. And I remember I helped one of my friends get a fake ID, or he wanted a fake ID. I told him what I did. He went and did it because he wanted to hang out with me, and I told him how to go about it, or how I did it back then, and he went and did it and got busted. And he lost his license for a substantial amount of time, like a decent amount of time, which was horrible. And then he didn't get his fake ID, which screwed him. So not only was he not able to drive, now he couldn't hang out in clubs. I felt bad. Another one of my friends had to get a fake ID. He got it, lost it. And then a lot of these younger guys, because I was younger too, by me having a fake ID, I would also get all the alcohol for a lot of parties. And I started bopping all over Florida because I met all different kids in gyms or friends through friends from different areas and different high schools. And I just got out of high school, so I was the kid who could get whatever they wanted alcohol-wise, and before you know it, you're making more and more friends doing that. But by buying a lot of alcohol or having access to it, they were getting bombed, drinking, people were getting intoxicated and all that. And I looked back again and said, was, again, good influence, bad influence. I think to a certain degree that was not. I wouldn't go crazy and buy too much alcohol, especially hard liquor. I wasn't that stupid, because the last thing I want to do was buy alcohol for somebody and then, have something happen to them. I was smart enough to think that through. But just my lifestyle and the way I acted a lot of times, thinking I was the shit, and even breaking the law on numerous different occasions, doing a lot of different things because you're just in that lifestyle. And then before you know it, you're meeting other kids, and then they're doing it with you as well. And you think you're cool, and you're kind of leading the pack, or you're kind of emulating it, maybe your uncles or other cousins or older friends or people that are doing things. And before you know it, you're taking on a lot of bad traits, and before you know it, you're kind of teaching others as well. And my mother once, there was a couple friends I had, and I remember her saying, I don't know if I trust them. They may be bad influences. She would always say that about certain people. And then behind her back, I would go from my buddies and go, I'm the bad influence. She just hasn't realized it yet. And I think a lot of times we have to look at our actions and realize a lot of times we're not that good of an influence, even though you may think you are, but you're not. And you may be doing things or have done things in the past that weren't really that cool. Or you were, and that can even go for kids. I think a lot of parents sometimes don't realize they're programming their kids to be something they maybe, or teach them things they shouldn't be really, not a lot of good things is what I should say, especially when it comes to attitude or things in that nature. I'm not going to get into specifics, but I think I had to learn that too. Like, there's an arrogance level. I've talked about this once on a previous podcast where we were all going, my kids were going to a private school at the time, and then the parents asked me and my kids, because they loved the camp, if we would like to join them. And my oldest daughter, who was only 10 at the time, I think 9 or 10, said, I'm sorry, we don't do those type of things. My he doesn't go out in the woods, and whatever she said, I was very embarrassed. But the truth was, that's what I said, and that's what I believed. I was almost too arrogant to go camping. That's kind of ridiculous, which, of course, that doesn't mean that I have to go camping. But sometimes a lot of what you say and do, your kids are picking up on those things. And that's something we really need to pay attention to, especially if you're drinking or smoking. Language, all these different types of things. And I'm not going to get on the podcast and start telling people all the time how they should raise their kids. But I think it's just across the board, our behavior, are we really a good influence or a bad? And you'd be shocked, and I've talked about this before, how many people look up to you, especially if you're successful. That goes for kids. It could be your nieces, your nephews, your friends' kids, whatever the case may be. And I lift a lot of weights, so a lot of my friends' sons, they love that I lift weights, and I'm still pretty strong at my age. And they've seen old pictures of me when I was really big, and they like that whole thing. And a lot of them are athletes, so it's all about, weights and that. And they talk to me sometimes, and I goof around and I tell them, get on steroids, but as a joke. But I never took steroids. But we go back and forth, and the one thing I try to be now more than ever is a better influence for people. It just makes me feel better. Is that perfect? Like, am I perfect? By no means. But a lot of times when I'm doing things or saying things, and that's why I do the podcast or the YouTube videos, I want to be honest about who I am, but I also want to show people the good and the bad, of all, at least me, and what I've been through. But I definitely want to help people, or at least influence them to do better for themselves or be better, and not put them in bad situations, or at least make them think it's cool to be in a bad situation. Because I think a lot of younger people, like I said, get influenced, and they don't realize a lot of their actions, what they can lead to. And I was in a lot of different situations that led to a lot of bad situations for me. And the last thing I ever want to happen to people that I know and love is that. That doesn't mean that they have to be naive and not learn about those things, but that doesn't mean at the same time they have to go through all those things. And that would be the one thing on the podcast, at least this one, I'd like to tell people is really take a step back, self-analyze your behavior, and realize again that everything you do, you may be influencing someone to do something great, or maybe doing something really bad. And that can even be someone you're in a relationship with, your kids, like I said, your siblings, whatever the case may be. And that was just something I wanted to address on this podcast. So pay attention to that. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. But if you want, you can check out my YouTube stuff. Putting up a lot of stuff on there regarding all different travel. I'm heading to Canada next week. Where am I heading to? Ontario? No, I'm heading to Toronto, and then I'm heading to some other places. And I've been doing a lot of traveling. Lately, we just did Hawaii. I was in California again. I'll be doing Oklahoma, actually, in the future, besides Canada. I'll shoot some videos there, and I'm going to be doing some videos in California again, most likely, as well. So, I'm also on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So, I'm going to wrap it up there. Please pay attention to, who you influence and who you don't, and how you go about it, basically is what I'm saying. And be honest with yourself, right? And also, if you let others influence you to do a lot of shitty things, you may have to get rid of those assholes. I'd hate to say it, because I think a lot of us, and I speak for myself, but I see a lot of us, we sometimes are influenced by people we shouldn't be allowed, or we shouldn't allow ourselves to be influenced by. When you're younger, like I was talking about, especially maybe in your later teens or even early 20s, you don't know what the hell you're doing. But if you're older and you kind of keep finding yourself at a position of just being all screwed up in your life, a lot of that is because you're letting others influence you, or you're following, I think a lot of times, what others have done in the past that you've kind of emulated. You may have to break away from that, and it's hard to do. That could even be picking up bad habits from smoking. I talk about it, drinking, or whatever the case may be. And you can do all those things. But when you want to stop doing those things, realize that you may be, part of the problem is others are doing it and they're influencing you to do it. Stop doing what you don't want to do, basically. All right, or letting others influence you to make you feel bad that if you don't keep doing something, you're a bad person, or you should be doing this or that. You know what's right or wrong, okay? Just follow your own heart. Take care, and if you're traveling, safe travels.